is 9/11 Freefall.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of 9/11 Freefall. I am your host, Andy Steele. Tonight, the guests are Pam Senzee and Dave Meiswinkle, the two great activists over at Quantum Matrix Radio. They're going to be doing a 9/11 Truth Walk across different parts of America, spreading awareness about the 9/11 controlled demolition evidence everywhere they go. They're going to be talking about that in tonight's interview. They're also going to be talking about the greater picture. Talking about the post-9/11 world, some of the consequences of the event that we focus on every week, and what has become of us as a country here now, and how we can turn it around. So before I play that interview, we're going to do what we do every week. We're going to take our 10 seconds of silence to remember the victims of 9/11 and their families, and all the people who died in the wars that followed 9/11. We're going to do that beginning now. And that is 10 seconds. My guests are Dave Meiswinkle and Pamela Senzee. Dave Meiswinkle is the president and founder of New Jersey 9/11 Aware. He's a retired New Brunswick police officer and a United States Army veteran, and presently he's a criminal defense attorney. David was the founder of the New Brunswick Reporter. His activism and articles outlining local municipal corruption brought the federal authorities to New Brunswick, which led to major investigations and the arrest, indictment, and conviction of prominent local political figures. Dave served as the secretary of the New Jersey Reform Party and was an independent candidate for governor against Chris Christie in 2009. He also ran for a congressional seat against Chris Smith in 2010. He holds a BA from Rutgers College, an MA from New York University, and a JD from Seton Hall University Law School. You guys can listen to my previous interviews with him. He's back here today to talk about his trip. Dave, welcome back to 9/11 Freefall.
Andy, thank you very much. A pleasure to be here.
And Pam Senzee is a mural and fine artist, an author and adventurer. In 2012, she crossed the United States by bicycle along with a fellow peace activist. They embarked on this journey on behalf of the organization Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. I've never heard of them before. Pam wrote about her experiences, lessons, and insights during this epic adventure in her book, Quantum Trek, a post-9/11 journey of transformation. Pamela, welcome back.
Hey, Andy, it's great to be here. And I remember as I was coming back from the trek by train, going back out west, I did a show with you on the train. That was pretty hectic, but a lot of fun.
Yeah, you've been a veteran on this show for quite a while, and it's been too long since you've been back. I always enjoy having you on. Very positive messages that you bring to this somewhat dark topic, and that's the direction I like to go with on this show. And David, I didn't know that you ran against Chris Smith in 2010. He was questioned about Building 7 a couple of times on C-SPAN's Washington Journal, and one time in particular, he sort of reminded me of George Costanza, trying to lie off a certain question. Just gave some.
I saw that interview, and that cracked me up too. I did run elections against both Christie and Smith, and in both elections, I emphasized the 9/11 and the need for a new investigation. I think I was the only candidate that did that. And then to the governor candidates, there was at least 9 candidates, most of them being independent candidates. But no, I'm familiar with that, the dumb face he was showing, like the anxiety that realization posed to him with regards to Building 7.
So what do you guys think of the state of 9/11 truth right now? We'll start with Pam.
The state of 9/11 truth right now, to be honest with you, Andy, I think people are waking up. I think more and more people are receptive. I'm running into more people that are sort of, people who maybe have not gone the long haul like us and have been in the trenches through the years are now it's just sort of a given. I think for more and more people, I think AE 9/11 Truth has made a remarkable effect on that awakening. So the focus that David and I have is really for the Trek. One of the focuses is the broader picture, and because of David's investigative background, I think he's been an investigator in his various capacities all his life, really, as a police officer and as an attorney, to look at this holistically as a criminal investigator would, because, as you know, 9/11 was never properly criminally investigated at all, because the 9/11 Commission was set up to quote unquote make recommendations, and there's that's a travesty of constitutional justice for our country.
Well, my first recommendation is have a real investigation.
Right.
Exactly.
That's what we're trying to do in New Jersey. We've talked about it before, but we've sent documentation and the DVD explosive evidence experts speak out to Governor Christie and to the Attorney General, the State Committee of Investigation in New Jersey, to all the Assembly people, 80 of them, the 40 state senators, and to all the prosecutors, 21 prosecutors. I think what's optimistic, though, depending how it goes down, is Walter Jones, a Republican in the House, has a bill, H.R. 14, and that's signed off or co-sponsored by Congressman Macy from Kentucky, and he's a Republican also like Jones, and Democrat Lynch from Massachusetts. And just recently, a couple days ago, Rand Paul, who's running for president, he joined in with Bob Graham, who was the co-chairman of the Joint Congressional Inquiry, that had a report back in 2002 in which George Bush, then the president, blacked out 28 pages that supposedly detail the financing of 9/11, and that has been still continued to black out by President Obama, who said he would eventually declassify it and hasn't yet. So the fact that now prominent politicians in both the Democrat and Republican Party, in both the House and the Senate, are at least looking at one issue having to do with 9/11, the financing is pretty important, keeps the issue certainly alive in the forefront, and it legitimizes the issue to some extent in a way that it won't. It's not peripheral. It's not like necessarily it's conspiracy stuff. Hey, this is really the real deal. This is a concern. It hasn't been looked at. It's been covered up or sat on. So in that regard, that's a new break. I haven't seen that before, and not too long ago. You're familiar with when Richard Gage, who was I think it was on C-SPAN or one of the major networks, he made a presentation. I guess for about 50 minutes. It was awesome presentation he made, and that was like, whoa, that was significant. So there are some significant changes. People are suddenly waking up, but I'd like to see it a bit faster. We need some breaks here. We need some more prominent people to step forward, but it's moving in the right direction towards a new 9/11 investigation, which, as Pam said, was really never done.
Well, what I like about what Senator Paul and former Senator Graham have pushed with this Transparency for the Families of 9/11 Act is just the title itself, how open it leaves the issue, because transparency obviously applies to the 28 pages, but it also applies to things like the Building 7 input data. It also applies to the notion of rerunning the analysis with the structural features that NIST omitted from its previous analysis included to see what kind of results they get. Certainly it applies to testing the dust samples, doing the same test that Niels Harriot's team did, having NIST do that. So they've left a big door open, whether intended or not. And I think it's something that we need to pounce on here in the movement, and especially the Science Truth movement, getting a new investigation into the building demolitions in New York that day. So what should we be doing more of in 9/11 Truth as we move forward from this point? We'll start with Pam.
Well, okay, Andy, I'm really glad you asked that question because obviously the obvious things, we do need a full-scale criminal investigation. We need international participation. We need the American people to totally wake up. And we need the people that are awake to do more than just, make Facebook posts or whatever. That's important too, social media and carrying the message and so on and so forth. But we really need to kind of creatively get out there and do things. And I think one of the reasons, and this is why David and I founded our show, Quantum Matrix Radio, and are going in some of the directions that we're going because there's this other aspect to it. And what that is that gets into the whole science of quantum physics, which we are students of. But we recognize that there is a group of quantum physicists that are telling us that nature and our reality is really born of consciousness, not of matter. That matter doesn't come first, consciousness does. And that when we're looking at it, it's particle. It's the world that we know. But when we're not looking at it, it's a wave of potentials. Our thoughts are very, very powerful. And what we think and how we look at things and seeing solutions, being able to envision solutions is absolutely crucial. Because I really do believe, and you and I have had these kinds of discussions in the past, Andy, so I know I'm not throwing you a curveball here, but we really do have an effect, a powerful effect, when we are looking at solutions and towards solutions and envisioning them, simply envisioning them, and then acting as though that potential is possible, because it truly is. So as Richard Gage, some of these leaders in the movement, we've had Barbara Honegger on our show a number of times. She's an extremely positive person. Richard Gage is an extremely positive person. A lot of the leaders in this movement, I've had Niels Harriot. He's actually a very positive and spiritually grounded person. The leaders seem to be people who actually can grasp the vision of something better and start working toward it. So I think everybody has that responsibility. You don't have to be like a leader out there on the world stage as these individuals are, but in your world, with whatever you're doing, bring that productivity of positive thinking and positive action. That is truly how we're going to change it. I believe that, Andy, with all my heart, that we are not going to change this if we don't think we can. If we're sitting around talking about how bad it is and how evil they are, we're not going to change it. We're just identifying something, we're not going to change it.
I think we're, Andy, on the brink of a new revolutionary set of laws having to do with quantum mechanics. And as Pam says, a lot of it has to do, I think, with attention and focus and creating the world that you want to exist. We hope to explore that at some length, but just regarding to your question of how to start it off, I think what would be great is if we have coming into a presidential election year, somehow we can make this an issue that the presidential candidates have to address, like a new 9/11 investigation. I know that it seems like that's a long ways off to do that, but that's those 28 pages not too long ago, and hopefully that'll be something that'll be declassified shortly. The LaRouche people are really big on Glass-Steagall. That's basically the separation of the speculative from the commercial interest regarding banking. And they believe that if that would happen, then that we would have basically more of a solvent economy, and the banks wouldn't be parasites like they are. But and there's actually a candidate now running for president, a guy named O'Malley. He used to be, I think, the Baltimore mayor. So he's running. I mean, not many people have heard him. I don't know what kind of coverage he's going to get. Certainly, they seem to be promoting him because of that issue, Glass-Steagall. There's probably, and it's a very important issue, just like the need for a new 9/11 investigation. But this guy's coming at it from who knows where, and he's now, I don't know how legitimate, but he's legitimate. He's doing it. He's put himself out there, and he has probably better issues maybe than a lot of other people, but that's a controversial issue that probably, I don't know if any of the major candidates are going to take up, but it would be great to see one of the candidates that is running, maybe even Rand Paul. Just think if he said, we need a new 9/11 investigation. All right, to my knowledge, he hasn't even come close to saying anything like that. But just imagine that if he did it or one of those major candidates did it. What we're doing in New Jersey is we're going to be connecting with all our legislators, hopefully now that school's closed down and we're not going to be going on to colleges for a couple months, and just sitting down with them with packets of information, with the DVD and the newsletter, etc., and ask them if they could sponsor some legislation and just familiarize them with the subject matter. That's basically what we'll be doing in the next few months.
I want to go back to what Pam was talking about with just the theme of your show and your idea of how the solutions are going to come. And it's funny because you listen to different religions, for instance, and you'll hear two different religions generally describe the same thing. Just have different names for it, and it's kind of a sort of a different vision of it, but you boil it down, it's kind of the same concepts. And so what you're describing here is what I call the secondary mission of 9/11 truth. We're pushing for a new investigation, but ultimately, too, we're making people more vigilant. We're also making people more aware of their world and take a deep look at what is important. The stuff you're talking about, the law of attraction, these things, I think our audience, most of them can identify with that, even if they don't think they can, even if they're getting lost in some of the metaphysical quantum vocabulary and jargon. I mean, think about growing up in high school. You could show up at a school dance, you could look like Brad Pitt, right? But if you got a scowl on your face and a bad attitude, you're not going to get very far, right? But you could go in there. You may not be the best looking guy, but you've got a great attitude. You're positive. You're somebody that people want to be around. That really adds to your attractiveness. There's a movie called What the Bleep Do We Know? I would bet money that you guys have seen it. And they use an example of a woman. While they're describing these kinds of concepts, they're having a little play drama taking place during it, and it's this woman whose husband left her for another woman, and so she's at another wedding. She's actually the photographer at a wedding, and she initially looks at I think it's the groom. I think this is the wedding reception she's at, looking at the groom talking to another woman, and she immediately imagines, because she had this experience with her previous husband, that groom is hitting on another woman. But then it turns out not to be the case. I don't know if it's like the dude's sister or something, but she's completely projecting her previous experience on the new experience. And so that affects her outlook, that affects her way of communicating with the world, and you can't do that. I mean, everything that happens in this world, you build a house, it starts off as a thought in somebody's mind. The airplane, for centuries, the thought of man flying was just like, I might as well be telling you that I got a time machine here, right? But somebody imagined it, somebody conceived it, it built over years, and now it's normal. It's very common to fly across the globe, even to go into outer space for some lucky people. So everything begins in our mind. We control our own reality, and the first step is being positive. It's imagining the day after 9/11 truth, what that looks like, and use that as a starting point, and then kind of work backwards. How do we get there? How do we get to that point? What will the world look like? We have to first envision it. But if we're doom and gloom all the time and always pointing out the negatives of the post 9/11 world and acting like it's an inevitability that we're going to fall into some kind of tyranny because we haven't exposed 9/11, then of course we're not going to reach our goal. So we have to be positive. We have to see the goal in front of us and just go for it and be willing to do the work and thinking that things are going to be okay. The human mind has a tremendous power, and I'm not talking in some freaky X-Men Professor Xavier type of way. I'm talking about just in terms of what we can create as human beings. Look at the cities we've built, the buildings we've built, the inventions. I mean, we keep on progressing. I just got a Bluetooth today for the first time. I mean, this thing is absolutely amazing. I can make phone calls just by saying somebody's name. That was science fiction 30 years ago, but that all began as somebody's thought. So we can absolutely change society, and it doesn't have to be like the other things that have happened in history that have gone unacknowledged. We are building a tremendous momentum as we move forward towards our goal. So I just wanted to throw that in there because I'm in absolute agreement with you guys, even if I express it in a different way. I think we're all on the same page here. Now, you guys are doing this trek, and I want to get to this because this is a very big thing you're doing. Pam, you did that cross-country trip a couple of years ago. It was, I think, the first time you were ever on the show talking about it. Here you are again. You're going to be doing another kind of trip. So I'm going to let you start off. Tell us, what is this trip going to be about? What are you going to be doing?
Okay. But first, just one little comment on what you just said, and thank you, because that was extremely well said. That film, What the Bleep Do We Know, is the best way for anyone to grasp these ideas. I mean, watch it 3 times and then go out and change the world. We have the power. And you, instead of reading you can read all these books, all these different, it's a deep science, but not all of us can understand it at that level or have time to read a lot of books. But that film gives you the synopsis because the quantum physicists are in the film. And they're telling you in layman's terms exactly what it all is about and how powerful our consciousness is, and how incredibly powerful the consciousness of one person is, and the power we do have to change the world. So think about it. Collectively, forget about it, man. We can indeed change the world. So, yes, thank you very much, Andy. Truth Walk 9/11 is a 500-mile, approximately 500 miles. It'll probably end up being more with all the little dog lakes that you have to do and so forth. But we're going from Shanksville to Washington, D.C., then over to the Pentagon 9/11 Memorial, back through D.C., through Baltimore, Philadelphia, historic sites in New Jersey, Trenton, Princeton, Newark, Morristown in there, and Newark because that's part of 9/11, and then into the Ground Zero Memorial area of New York City. And we're going to actually close the trek at the Survivors Tree, the 9/11 Survivor Tree, which is a really great story if anyone wants to Google it. So during this trek, we are definitely going to explore the broader picture of 9/11, the whole picture, as an investigator such as David is. If he were preparing for a case, what would he be looking at through all of these, at all of these sites and all of the different dimensions of 9/11 and 9/11 truth from an investigator's perspective? Because what we do have in 9/11 truth is we have people, going in this area or that area, and so 9/11. Truth Walk 9/11 is really going to look at the whole thing, as an investigator would, and so that's part of it. Another key part of it is the Constitution, the U.S. Constitution and the Bill of Rights, because we believe that these are really sort of like divine rights. They're like inalienable core rights of people, human rights for people of this nation and all over the world. Our founding fathers put into place really the rights of nations and the rights of peoples everywhere. And we have lost so many liberties in relationship to the fraudulent story of 9/11, and also our international treaties and the way that we're behaving in this brutal warlike draconian manner around the world with the global war on terror and all of these subversive measures, indefinite detention around the world and of Americans, all these different things, extraordinary rendition. We want that to stop, and we want people to wake up to the connection, because, the peace movement and the truth movement, for instance, it should be one movement, but they're not, and they don't always seem to get in step with each other, and people in the peace movement don't necessarily understand 9/11 truth, or people in the Constitution movement don't necessarily understand 9/11 truth, and it's really crucial that they understand this core pivotal connection, because the loss of our constitutional liberties is because of the fraudulent story of 9/11. So in addition to that, the third tier of our walk has to do with what we just discussed, this transformation and bringing in the quantum aspect and how we're really going to envision and transform this picture.
Now, David, Pam mentioned about pursuing it as an investigator, and again, you're a practicing criminal defense attorney, so can you please talk about due process of law as it relates to 9/11?
Sure. Well, the due process of law is mostly the aftermath of 9/11. Was the investigation where there really was no investigation, and the legislation that came after that, where you had we had the Patriot Act, and you had this indefinite detention, you had the NSA spying. Due process of law, or procedural due process, basically has to do with fairness, that things are being done fair. That now, if you can be arrested without being told why you're being arrested, and confined without access to an attorney, without getting a date of appearance, without being charged officially or knowing what your charges are. That's all a violation of due process. So just the fairness in the system of the justice, where you can throw people in Guantanamo, all right, without any legal recourse to anything. Make them totally slaves and or the prisoners for life. Just to think about that, how that irks someone that would believe in fairness. That, hey, listen, this guy should have his day in court. He should be properly charged. He should have a right to a speedy trial. He should have the right to confront his accusers. He should have a right to be able to present evidence to show his innocence, to call witnesses to show his innocence, to cross-examine any witnesses against him. He should have the right to have an attorney. None of these, or could be, situations could result where a person, and it has resulted, has none of these rights. This is totally contradictory to our Constitution. The Fourth Amendment, having to do with protection of your belongings and your the sanctity of your house. To quote the Fourth Amendment, is the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures. Shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause. Means you have to have some reason, sufficient reason, supported by oath of affirmation, which means you have to go before a judge who's supposed to be an objective tier here, is going to listen to the facts of the case, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the person or things to be seized. So a warrant normally goes to specifics, and you have to get permission from a judge to do that. That's all out the window now. They don't need that type of, those procedures don't apply necessarily. And you've seen with the NSA, now they're listening to anything they want to listen to, or had been listening to anything they want to listen to, and storing that information, meaning your emails or your telephone calls or this, even this call, this, they could be snooping in on it. All a violation of the law. What we take for granted is that truth doesn't acknowledge that, or justice doesn't acknowledge that, but fairness doesn't acknowledge that. And we've allowed that to slip into that crevice where these incredible principles, which should be guiding lights, have been put in the alleyway, in a dark alleyway, and hidden. and to our detriment, and most of all, our detriment to being the free, sovereign people. So that's a little bit about what due process is, Andy. It's very essential to the fairness of how procedure is. If somebody wants to take your freedom, to take your body and put it in a prison, your person, your life, your liberty, your pursuit of happiness, your property, that's what the Constitution was set up to protect, that life, liberty, and property, right? So if the Constitution is being violated, and basically just think what kind of due process, if we want to talk about an investigation or talk about fairness, how we want to look at it. The victims, what kind of process do they have? Their families. I mean, what an assault! What a sacrilege to have these people murdered, and what a disrespect to human life and to them and to the country. Not to look at it properly, not to put all the pieces on the table, all the different possible theories, bring the best scientists in to look at the different theories, eliminate them, and then start deducing who your suspects are and move in that direction. That's basically what should be done. It should be transparent, as you quoted Rand Paul's new act. Transparent, objective, complete, thorough investigation. That's what we need.
Well said. And you hear the establishment, the other side, cite the victims of 9/11 when they're trying to justify attacks on civil liberties or a new war, but how much do they really think about them? How much do they think about the lives lost that day and the need to answer these questions? I have studied Dark Ages. I've been watching documentaries on King Henry II, and basically, when you strip away all of the regalia and ceremony, those times were really no different than if you had some kind of Los Angeles drug lord take over a certain section of territory after the United States Capitol fell, or some kind of scenario like that. It's really not much different. And how much our due process and how much just the rule of law is important to protect people. I mean, if some noble friend of the king wanted to go into your house, in the Dark Ages and say, your daughter's cute, I want her, spring her to the palace later. I mean, there was really not a lot you could do about that other than run, all right? And so, people say, well, it could never get that bad again. Well, I mean, yeah, it could if you let things slide. I think that letting the crime of the century slide is a slide too far. I mean, all those people did was go to work that day. So we need to use our voice, and we need to use our spirit and our minds to protect what is most sacred, not just give lip service to the U.S. Constitution, not just celebrate July the 4th and eat a hamburger, but to really understand why our founding fathers created this Constitution, why this nation was seen as a beacon of light in the world. Pam, do you have any comments on that?
No, I agree with you 100%. And if anybody wants to kind of go further on that, they should get Naomi Wolf's book, The End of America, or watch that on YouTube. You can see a presentation of her book by her on YouTube called The End of America, Naomi Wolf. It really nails what's happening in our country today. It's about the 10 steps of fascism. And somebody had a close friend of hers was kept telling her as things happened, as 9/11 happened, and as these draconian measures were being put into place, she kept saying, this happened in Germany, this happened in Germany, this happened in Germany. And Naomi Wolf was skeptical. And this friend showed up with all these books, and she said, read. And I suppose that she trusted this friend enough that she actually did start reading, and she had the mortifying awakening that it is happening. So yes, it is. There is a tyrannical force that is taking over, and in my view, 9/11 was a coup d'état. And yes, from the inside, that there were inside forces, most assuredly, because of the massive operation certainly required that. That is my view. So I'm just putting that out there personally, as a mom and as a citizen. But so it is very serious. So when I talk about positivity, it's not a sort of a detached, aloof, just look at the positive kind of attitude at all. I mean, I do believe we have to look. We do have to address what is happening, but we have to do it with the recognition that we can turn it around. It's going to take some time. It's big, but we can do it. And the more of us that work together, the more expediently we will change it. And there's an interesting thing about change and growth, Andy. I wish I could pull up some scientific reference to it, but I know it's there. It's the exponential factor. When paradigm shifting starts taking place, it does it exponentially. That's why you start seeing people who haven't, been awake at all through the whole process, and all of a sudden they're like, hey, this is going on, and hey, I'm in. Let's change it. It just starts happening exponentially. So we have to keep that in mind. We who are the water carriers right now, it can, and I believe most assuredly will happen. I think we're in that process. But, anyway, go ahead.
Well, we talk a lot about the post 9/11 world and some of the changes to our society that we've witnessed in these years since it happened. Now, David, you were a whistleblowing police officer. What are your views on the changing climate of police work and some perceive the militarization of police forces in America, in the wake of 9/11?
Right. I think it's a very people should be very concerned about it. I saw it when I was a police officer. I haven't been a police officer for a while now. I retired in 2001. Actually, a month before 9/11 actually happened. But during the time I was there, you could see there was an influence there to try to make them more what you call like a federalized police force throughout the whole country. That's basically I had some inkling that that's what they wanted to do, federalize the local police. So you had the posse comitatus, which basically gave the states and the local areas a freedom where federal troops wouldn't be able to come in. Now you see the federal troops being geared up just as if they were in overseas in a major war. And then the kind of gear they have is all hardcore military type of gear. I think it's a dangerous precedent. I think that there seems to be even a different quality of police officers, and I'm not sure if that's the quality or that's the times. And the training that they're getting, it's sort of like brainwashing them to look at the society or the people as the enemy. Now, I've worked with some police officers that look at society or look at people as basically, you're not there to serve them. They're basically there to do what you tell them to do. When police officers become that, they're supposed to get psychiatric evaluations, etc. And, past that, sometimes they hire people that they shouldn't be hired. They're not balanced in that regard. Or they maybe are too immature and they don't understand situations, which they should. The best police officers I worked with were Vietnam War veterans. The town I worked at the time, New Brunswick, had one of the highest crime rates in the country, actually, right before I got on. And a lot of these guys came on like 5 years before me, and they were recruited right out of Vietnam. And I got the honor to work with a number of them, and they were excellent. They were brave, and they weren't kissing anyone's rear end as far as the politics, because there's a lot of politics in police department. You play the right politics, you get the right job. It could be a safer job, or it could be a job as a detective, which would give you more insights, and you could get promoted better if you play the game. But these guys, or at least some of them that I worked with, weren't like that. They didn't want to play the politics in the department for the most part, and they just wanted to do their job. So that was refreshing working with them. Those type of guys. They were mature in a sense. They went into war. They did all that stuff. So I saw as I got older and was leaving the department, it seemed to be not that kind of quality coming in, although some of the one or two guys that had been in Iraq. So I think that adds a lot to as far as the maturity and the being really there, and in the sense of this is what it's about. And those guys were fair in how they treated the public. And you notice too, you can drive in a police car, and if you have a scowl on your face, you're talking about going to a dance. It's the same as being a cop. You create automatic fear in people, and you can see the reaction that people have. But if you smile, I started experimenting. I said, I'm going to just smile when I see a kid and wave or something, and you see the kid beam. I mean, all of a sudden, even if he's being pulled by his parent, and his parent, doesn't like cops, and the kid look around and he'll smile. So, but to answer your question, Andy, I've seen the difference in being an attorney. I represent people that, of course, we always go in for suppression hearings and things of that nature. So I call subpoena police officers as witnesses because I think that that'll help my client somehow. And I've noticed that there seems to be a nastiness, a little bit more nasty than they used to be, or a little testier, or there's and again, it might be the times because they're under more stress and pressure now than they were before. But it's not a good situation. You have to defuse it, and it's all brought by this terror. There's all this terrorism that's been hyped up, and it's put everybody on alert, and everybody's nerves is afraid out there. So I think that has something to do with it too.
Andy, I want to comment on that whole stream as well, if I could, because I have a friend who's a cop back in Arizona, and he's a really good guy. And I've known him for years, him and his family, and he's a good person. But he really does believe the official account. So we have to keep in mind that there are many people in law enforcement that are being indoctrinated. They're being militarized. They're being Homeland Security-ized. And keep in mind that Homeland Security subverts our Constitution. The two can't live together. They can't. You can't have the United States Constitution and Bill of Rights and the Patriot Act - Homeland Security. So that is something that will have to one day end if we are to fully restore our Constitution and Bill of Rights. But a lot of these guys believe, and perhaps from a young age, because a lot of these cops are young, and 9/11, happened almost 14 years ago. So they believe that there is this imminent threat and the need and so on and so forth. So part of our responsibility is reaching out to them as well. And you know about that because I happen to know that you were in charge of the police chief outreach that AE 9/11 Truth did a couple of years back, and that reached 10 or 12,000 police chiefs around the country, and we did a special one here in New Jersey that David was in charge of. So I just wanted to throw that out there because there's a lot of, among the activist community, there's a lot of a sense that police are the enemy. And in some cases they are, because of their brutal behavior. But they're people too. These are our brothers and sisters, and so we also need to reach out to them. I just wanted to say that.
Well, I think one of the most difficult positions anybody can be in is having to defend something that's undefendable. You see this happen a lot of the time with 9/11, asking congressmen, how does Building 7's 105 feet of free fall possible without explosives? And they will still defend the official story, still say it's a conspiracy theory. You have no idea what they really think, but they have to toe that company line. I had this issue when I worked for an insurance company, dental insurance. All right, your dentist tells you that you need a procedure done, so you say, yeah, okay, and then they go ahead and do the procedure, and you ends up getting denied for medical necessity reasons. And in a lot of these cases, the reasons were very flimsy. So who do you call? Well, you call and you talk to me, right? And so I'm here arguing with the dentist, having to defend the company line. And in some cases, it wasn't defendable. I mean, in some cases, yeah. I mean, the denials were a little bit more legitimate. I question the whole system, but that's another topic. But in many cases, you're sitting here having to toe the company line because your superiors are listening to you. You never know when they're jumping in on a call and listening. And that's a really tough position. And so what you end up getting... Another thing, too, is they want you to shove people off the phone in under 3 minutes if they can do this. So, you got some old lady who's taking a while to get her ID card out or get some explanation of benefits paper in front of her, and people are putting them on mute and cursing them out, and people are getting stressed and angry. And I just decided I wasn't going to do that anymore. So I would just help each person as long as I could and just kind of shoot it straight with them. And ultimately, I didn't stay at that job, but I understand this feeling, and so there may be a lot of police officers out there who are aware of this, who aren't going along with the federalization of their police forces, who may know that the buildings in New York were brought down in a controlled demolition. And so what do you do in that situation? My advice is this. I mean, you may, for whatever reason, have to toe the company line for now, but they don't own your heart and soul. They don't own your mind. When you're out there on patrol, you still are you, no matter what. You're just in a tough situation, but you can still act like yourself, and you don't have to report every single thing you do. Go ahead, Dave.
No, that's right, Andy. You have a tremendous amount of discretion as a police officer, and in the situations where it really impinge upon the public, lots of times they're actually rather rare. I mean, most of the calls, you're not going to get calls like that are going to, blow up that, with some incident or, some riot situation or things of that nature. There's much more mundane and routine where you have a lot of discretion, even like in a motor vehicle stop. You don't have to write a ticket. You can give a person, tell them that what they did wrong. You can give them a break or whatever, and they let them go. And sometimes I think that they get a lot more out of that and respect that they know they went through the light. They were in a hurry. They tell you that. Basically, you cut them a break if you have that discretion to do that. You have discretion to do lots of things, and most of the times you're going through like alarms. Though you're going through, a lot of house alarms, or you're doing accident reports and things of that nature, or you're going to domestic violence, which is very dangerous, where husbands and wives or boyfriends and girlfriends are tearing each other apart. It's not because of you're going there. But I think part of what you were saying before about your job, and as far as working for a company or corporation, and that's what the police are doing, working for the city, I think in analyzing the value systems of a society overall, and as what Pam said in reference to Naomi Wolf and the 10 Steps to Fascism, that it's important to realize that we are in a society now where corporations have become the dominant power. Not that they should be, but they are right now. And then through that legal decision, Citizens United, that basically allowed them to give unlimited contributions to candidates, and basically meaning they can control, who's going to be elected, basically by throwing all kinds of money. Anyway, that value system for the corporation, as opposed to the people, that value system of Wall Street as opposed to Main Street, I think a lot of police, if they really examined it, they would see that they're really in Main Street. They're really with the people. They're really with their brothers and sisters and mothers and fathers. And they're not with that elite. So it's the elite that's setting the agenda. It's the elite that, in my opinion, we don't have to go into it, it's creating the terror situations that is putting everybody on pins and needles and ready for another clampdown if they could maneuver it, if they could get away with it, to take more rights away. But the trump card we have is basically the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. The preamble of the Constitution is, we the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, to ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. And then with the Bill of Rights, those rights, so that no country that I know has that type of those instruments of really protection and or liberation or freedom. So as long as we still stay true to them, assert them, and run with them, the police eventually, they swear to that Constitution when they get in, just like a military soldier. And as Pam said, a lot of these guys, and I met them, listen, I know when I was in high school, and a lot of the people were good friends of mine went and became soldiers. They thought they were doing what was best for them. They didn't realize they were just being used. They were being used. Most times, soldiers are being used by powerful special interests. If they start to realize that, they will be totally changed and different. The same with the police. In the situations they're put in lots of times, they're maneuvered, and they, unfortunately, are in very tough situations. A police officer's position is very tough. You have a split second, lots of times, between, life and death, and that's, so it's not, it's easier to criticize than to be in someone's shoes that's in that situation. But the situation is not to have those situations for the most part, if you can alleviate them. And a lot of it can be diffused through society if you set it up in the proper way. The way it's set up now is to assure that more and more problems will exist and persist.
Yeah, and there's no greater weapon than the moral high ground and sincerity and friendliness. You can diffuse a lot of situations just by trying to be nice and get the situation resolved in the simplest way as possible. Take the pride out of it. Don't stick your chest out at people. Just, and I'm not lecturing cops. I'm just lecturing anybody. I've learned this in situations. You're walking down the street in a rough neighborhood and people are staring you down. You smile at them. It completely diffuses the situation. Not in every case.
Well, that's right. I've seen it where a police officer would go in and he would be yelling loud, and boy, we'd turn everybody off. But I used to work with a guy. I love working with this guy. He was a Vietnam War vet, and he had like the deepest baritone voice. And he'd go into a domestic violence situation where everybody was going crazy, fighting and yelling and everything, and he would start talking. And you had to stop to listen to the guy. It was great. And as soon as you stopped, as soon as he could, people would stop their engagement and refocus. Not on each other, not even hurting each other, but on his voice. The situation was over. It was over. So it was like what Pam was saying, too, on focusing. If all of a sudden your attention is focused on something different, you're out of the situation. So if we take our way out of all the negative and put it into the positive, in other words, we can, work towards the positive and achieving it.
Now, Pam, I want to ask you, while we still have time here, last another 5 minutes left, this trip that you guys are doing, this is also going to be a documentary, right? You're going to be interviewing some key people.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you so much for bringing that up. And people can they can go to our website, www.qmamedia.com. That's qmamedia.com. And on the homepage there will be our Truth Walk campaign on Indiegogo, where people can support the campaign with a donation if they like. That would help us to make this documentary, to complete the trek and make the documentary. But yes, we have a lot of people lined up so far, and we're going to have more. One of them, I believe, is going to be you yourself, Andy, so I'm looking forward to that, because we want to interview people who've been towing the line all these years, and you've been a media voice in the face of essentially a media blackout on this topic. So we want to include that aspect. But we're going to interview people like Richard Gage, of course, and Graham McQueen, and Kevin Ryan, and we have so many others. We have Colleen Rowley has agreed to be interviewed as well. So an FBI whistleblower. So we want to get people from the peace movement. And we want to create bridges between the peace movement and the truth movement, or the constitutional movement and the truth movement. So we're working on that, and just trying to build those bridges. And of course, we'll be filming along the way. We're going to interview family member Bob McIlvaine. He's going to meet us in Princeton, where his son Bobby, who died in one of the towers on 9/11. And he has just been an absolutely phenomenal voice since then. He has really, Bob McIlvaine has has really just carried the torch all these years in his son's name. You know, so when you mentioned the opposition talking about family members, well, there are numerous family members. Matter of fact, we had the 9/11 Commission because family members pressed for an investigation, and we're sorely disappointed. But so we'll be talking to Bob in Princeton. We'll want to talk to other family members. We may talk to politicians. If we can talk to quantum physicists, all sorts of people along the way, philosophers, peacemakers, people who care, just people who care what's happening in the country, how can we change it, and addressing all of those things. And of course, it'll just follow us along on the walk as well. And the things that we experience, the places we go, we're going to a lot of historic sites of our founding fathers. So. Yes, Andy. It's we want people involved with the documentary, and they can also contact us directly if they have suggestions at truthwalk911@qmamedia.com. So that's another way that people can reach out to us.
All right, truthwalk911 at what was that? Where was the at again?
qmamedia.com.
qmamedia.com. We will link that up at 911freefall.com. And you guys need to be following the truth career, activist career of these two individuals. They're doing some great work. Their show is Quantum Matrix Radio. It airs on this network, No Lies Radio, every week on Mondays. So look that up. You can listen to it in the archives. But guys, you have done some tremendous, awesome work here. You're going to keep on doing it. We're going to keep on following your trek. And good luck to you on your journey.
Thank you so much, Andy. Good talking to you again.
Thanks a lot, Andy. You take care.
This program is on every Thursday night on No Lies Radio at 10 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Pacific. You can also download MP3s of this show from the Internet Archive by going to 911freefall.com. This is Andy Steele saying have a great week and good luck.